Hello guys, this is Ark and this is the patch 13.11 notes. In the previous patch, obviously we got the mid-season one where we got a lot of changes to itemization mainly, specifically for marksman. Some item became mythic, some other became legendary. We also got some support item changes and some lethality item changes. So I'm not sure what's in this patch, but I'm assuming there will be some trimming, I guess, for the changes in the previous patch. But let's see what else is going on. I know that Rell is getting reworked, so I'm gonna leave this for another video. So let's get on with the changes. So Akali gets plus 10 damage on her Q, base damage on her Q. Um, Obviously, these types of changes, people need uh, to tether them with things like wave clear, right? It's just extra damage to champion, so yay, more damage. Um, if this 10 extra damage means that Akali can clear waves faster, let's say need to use one less Q to clear out a wave, for example, or Q auto attack means that clears out a minion instead of using two auto attacks, for example. These changes, uh, like this plus 10 damage, is much bigger than it initially seems. Also, this is the bread and butter of Akali, the main damage source. I mean, the E deals a lot of damage as well, but this is like the wave clear. This is the poking inside the minion wave, for example, etc. So the fact that this gets 10 extra damage at all ranks means that since you spam this ability more than any other ability, that it is quite a significant buff, especially again if it helps with wave clear, for example. Amumu W damage decreased base per tick at 10 to 7 on the W. Um, Again, kind of similar to Akali here. This is a change that, minus 3 damage, who cares? But this is per 0.5 seconds, so this is minus 6 damage per second on an ability that Amumu pretty much leaves open for the entirety of his like both his jungle clear and his champion combat. I mean, later in the game, I do not think that this will be making that big of a difference, but in the early game, especially, um, this might mean that he takes 2 to 3 seconds longer to clear the initial clear now, or maybe he doesn't get a kill in a skirmish because of that. Will this move Amumu out of the meta, especially in lower bracket where Amumu is strong? Absolutely not. But these small changes, can catch you by surprise occasionally. So I think it was a deserved nerf. I think Amumu was quite strong, especially after the last patch. So that's a decent nerf. Same way for Akali. I think this is a decent buff. I think Akali has been on the downswing for a very long time now, and getting this buff here, I think, is a good thing for her. Aphelios, bonus attack damage 5 to 30 to 4.5 to 27. I mean, Aphelios has been on the strong side of the AD carries for quite a while now, but I'm not sure if this is a big enough nerf to move him outside of the meta, especially in pro play. Um, and having minus 0.5 AD at level 1 is virtually nothing. Having minus 1 in is at level 4, I think. Again, it's almost nothing. Having like minus 3 at like maximum rank, again, not the end of the world. I do not think this moves Aphelios away from the meta. Um, I think if you really want to nerf Aphelios, I think maybe you could hit both his attack damage and attack speed ratio. Not ratio, but per leveling. And the lethality he gets. By these small margins, I think that will be a decent nerf for Aphelios, but this doesn't really do anything. Aurelion Soul is Singularity, mana cost 60 to 100 to 80 to 100, so 20 more mana at rank 1. This is the ability that he maxes second, so he will spend 20 extra mana on his E for the first 7 levels of the game. At level 8, he will be spending 15 more. Um, and of course, at level 13, it stays the same. The thing about Aurelion Sol is that his early game is weak technically. His late game, regarding mana issues, etc. And at the late game, he doesn't really have any mana issues. So hitting his early game with this change to his mana pool is great. Um, Magic damage per tick 0.25 seconds. So they changed the AP ratio from 6.25% of AP to 5% of AP. Um, I think this is a strong nerf to Aurelion Sol to his early game, but even in his late game as well. Um, Maybe there are situations now where he does not like clear out minion wave as safely or doesn't get enough time to get the stacks out of minions dying because of this small AP ratio nerf. Maybe the 20 extra mana means that he might be unable to cast an extra E inside the laning phase, which again might mean -5, -6 stacks. Which if it happens like 3 or 4 times inside the game, this means that roughly anywhere from 20 to 25 fewer stacks, which again it can play a big role to his transition to the mid and late game. So I think this is a good nerf for Aurelion Sol. ZIQ Conqueror Sands cooldown 14 to 6 to 12 to 6. WRI summon rates 500 to 525. Magic damage 55% ability power to 60% of ability power. So over the past, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 patches, it feels like, and towards the start of the season, um, Azir got multiple changes slash nerfs. They tried to attack his early game mana pool and his cooldowns, and they basically made Azir unplayable because you fall back in lane so far that you cannot really recover from. That you have no lane pressure. You probably drop minions as well. So these changes are buffs to Azir, but are they really buffs? I mean, Q going down from the cooldown going from 14 to 12 seconds. I mean, it seems good on paper, but with all the mana problems that Azir has, is this really a buff? I mean, if anything, now if you spam Q on cooldown, your mana pool gets depleted even faster. So does this even make a difference? The thing about Azir, I think now is that they max W on him anyway. So maybe this is like get some strength at like level 7, level 8, for example, where you get your lost chapter. You do not have as many mana problems anymore. So maybe this at level 7 becomes slightly like it actually becomes noticeable. Um, but I think Azir now suffers from so many other problems that I do not think that this really changes anything. The W, the summon range is nice. Um, the extra AP ratio damage is also nice, but I do not think this makes Azir any more playable than he was in the previous patch. So Azir will be needing some extra buffs, I think, especially to his mana pool, if they want to have him back in pro play. Which I mean, personally, I do not think Azir needs to be a mainstay in pro play. It's good uh, to be picked occasionally, but being like blinded in every single game or like being permabanned is like, nah, no, thank you. Ivan, what is going on here? So Ivan Q root caller. Ivan can now recast Q to jump directly to the target, while Ivan and allies can issue an attack command to move to their auto attack ranges distance away from the target. Cast range plus 50. Non-epic change Q's cooldown is now reduced by 50% when used on non-epic monsters. Um, so what this means is that, when you queue somebody with Ivan, then you can like right click auto attack him to move to your auto attack range. So like for example, your Jinx AD carry can right click the rooted target and move to like 500 attack range away from the target. What this does is that you can still do this as Ivan, but now if you recast Q to jump to the target, just jump on top of them, which I think is good if you press E on yourself, for example, and it's about to explode. So you just Q on top of the rooted enemy, and the shield explodes onto them. So just some more reliability, I guess, which is good. And now Q's cooldown is also reduced by 50% on like things like red buff, blue buff, ghouls, etc. Which is great. I think it's great. W Brosmaker. Brosmaker passive bonus magic damage on hit when exiting the Bros for 3 seconds now apply to allied champions. Okay, this is massive. Um, ally on hit damage 5 to 15 plus 10% of Ivan's AP. Brush spawn vision duration 3 seconds to 8 seconds. Brush duration 30 seconds up to a maximum 45 seconds. Or until your team loses vision inside of them. Okay, big changes here. Auto attacks empowered with Brush Maker now have a special visual effect to reflect the on-hit damage. This is visual only. Um, so big changes to his W now. So first of all, now your allies that are inside this process, they get some on-hit damage as well, kind of like a mini ardent sensor, I'm assuming, which is great. I think only Ivor benefiting from something like this felt a bit underwhelming. Now this is great. Of course, Ivern I think gets more damage than this on his own auto attack, so it's not like a massive buff to everybody else, but it's nice to have this. Like it gives your allies incentive to like stay inside your buses, or you W on top of them and they get the buff. And also the way that the bosses now stay in the game is that I think you have to be inside of them. Like the initial spawn vision duration is 8 seconds now from 3 seconds, but previously it didn't matter. The brush would stay for 30 seconds no matter what. Now it can stay for up to 45 seconds, but you have to basically have vision inside the boost. So either have a champion inside or maybe a ward or something like that. Of course, it says that the initial brush vision duration is 8 seconds now. So it will stay up for the first 8 seconds, then somebody needs to be inside the boost for it to keep existing. I think this is a great change. Overall, I think this is a great change for Ivan, a great buff. Um, it triggers it if, when the shield detonates, there are no enemies that are hit by the detonation and the shield has not been broken, the duration of the shield is renewed. Wow, that's big. So basically, you press C on somebody or even yourself. If when it explodes you do not hit any champion and the shield like still exists, it will be renewed. The duration of the shield will be renewed. The strength will not, but the duration will be renewed. So I think the shield stays for 3 seconds now. So if you do not hit anybody with it, then the shield will keep existing for another 3 seconds. Of course, as long as there is a shield left, which I think is a great change as well. Our Daisy attack range 125 to 175, HP regeneration 0 to 2.5 health per second, that's fine. Base movement speed 420 to 440, base attack speed 0.7 to 0.75. Daisy's bonus attack speed 30, 50, 70 to 30, 45, 60. Daisy slam damage 100% of Daisy's AD plus 20% AP to 40, 60, 80 plus 100% of Daisy's AD plus 20% AP. So big buffs on Daisy across the board, like to hear tankiness and attack range, damage, attack speed, everything is buffed. Not to a broken state, but I think Ivan was falling behind everybody else for a champion that is quite tricky to play, a bit niche, so to speak. Um, so I think all these changes are great for especially Ivan mains, but pretty much like anybody who wishes to attempt to play Ivan, I guess, and was a bit clunky before. I think now Ivan can see a lot of play, especially with the W and E changes. Jinx, attack speed growth 1.36 to 1. So she gets less attack speed from leveling up now, which I'm not sure if this is a big enough change. I mean, same for Aphelios earlier on. I do not think this changes anything, not really. Kalista, another lot of changes. Wow. Base stats, base health plus 26, nice. Health regeneration plus 0.25, nice. Health regeneration growth 0.2, so she gets a lot more tankiness now in the form of health and health regeneration. Attack damage 66 to 6 to 1, that's a big drop, minus 5 AD, wow. Attack damage growth 3.25 to 3.25, so another big change. So she loses 5 AD at level 1, and then she loses half an AD, a point of AD per level, which means that at like level 18, for example, she will be minus 14 AD, which is quite big. Um, Passive martial poise. Kalisa's basic attacks no longer miss if a target leaves vision. I never understood why this existed in the first place. This is good. Damage dealt on hit, 90% of total AD to 100% of total AD. Okay, so this makes sense. This makes sense for this. So now she has less attack damage overall, but her auto attacks now deal the entirety of their attack damage as damage. For those of you who didn't know, Kalisa's auto attacks before were dealing 90% of the AD. So now it deals the full damage, which is pretty much the same for every other champion in the game. Um, Q Pierce, physical damage, plus 5% of AD, which I mean doesn't change much since they nerfed your AD anyway. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, maybe if you build a lot of AD items, maybe this is a small buff to your Q's damage, but like later on. E-Rend, cooldown 14 to 8 seconds to 8 seconds at all ranks, that's massive. Physical damage per extra stack, 10 to 34 base goes to 8 to 24, which is a big nerf. And 23.2 to 40.6% of your AD to 25 to 45% of your AD, plus of course the 20% AP that existed from the previous patch. So this has to be involved in some sort of math to find out the break-even points. So she gets less base damage on every extra spear that she stacks on an enemy, but she gains more AD ratios. So if let's say we are at level 18, right, minus 14 AD, this means that um, she roughly gets the same damage from this as it does from this. Um, kind of similar for this. So, I'm trying to figure out if this is a nerf or a buff. Um, yeah, so they say that we're targeting some pretty large buffs. So I'm assuming these are buffs as long as he builds more like AD centric and not um, like Guinsos and all that stuff. I'm not sure. I guess we will see in practice. I think this is a buff overall, if you build a lot of AD especially, but I guess we will wait and see. I like this one, this change though, the cooldown change, because sometimes like you miss the reset by like a small amount of damage. Now that you have this much much more quickly now is can be big, you know. Uh, I guess we will see how Kalista works out. Rek'Sai, another big lot of changes. Tremor sense refresh rate, 1.5 seconds to 1 second. So now when you're underground, you you see the enemies moving more often, kind of like a red trinket type of thing, which is good. Heal with maximum fury, 20 to 190 to 5 plus 20 for every 3 levels, and 2% plus 2% of maximum HP for every 3 levels. Um, so I cannot do the math right now, but what I'm assuming is that if you build um, a lot of health on Rek'Sai now, for example, Gold Drinker, Sterak's Gauge, etc., this healing is bigger now. But I mean, at the same time, do you do you really care about the passive healing for Rek'Sai at like 2 to 3 items? Not really. I mean, this is not really that important, I'm assuming. So I don't know. It is what it is. Q Queen's Wrath unburrowed, so she's above ground now. Cooldown 4 seconds at all levels to 4 to 2 seconds based on rank, which is great. Buff duration 5 seconds to 3 seconds. This is also massive. Hit and buff. Basic attacks now refresh the buff duration of Queen's Wrath. Wait, what? Basic attacks now refresh the buff duration. Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense. Q's buff no longer ends prematurely if Rek'Sai is burrowed for more than 1.5 seconds. Alright, so I love these changes. This is kind of what they did with Ares W, where like, you know, you press W, you have the 3 orbs around you, but if you do not use all of them, the ability does not go on cooldown, and they stayed for a very, very long time. Um, I think it was the same with Vayne's Q as well. You press Q with Vayne, and if you do not auto attack, you have the empowered auto attack for the next like 7 seconds, which means that you cannot use like, it doesn't go on cooldown for the next 7 seconds plus the cooldown itself. Um, these changes are great because now the buff duration goes from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. So let's say you press Q with Rek'Sai, but you do not have anything to auto attack, for example, you will not stay with a buff for 5 seconds. You will stay with a buff for 3, and then its actual cooldown will begin, which is great. Because more often than not, if you're not auto attacking, you prefer to have the buff duration for less and have it go on cooldown. And the cooldown is also goes from 4 seconds to 2 seconds at maximum rank now, which is also great. I think this is a great change for XI. Um, so pretty good so far. Queen's Wrath burrowed, so that's when you're below ground. Reveal duration from 2.5 seconds to 5 seconds. This is big. Basically double the duration of the reveal. Um, I'm not a Rek'Sai main, so I'm not sure if the 2.5 seconds was low. But the 5 seconds, like doubling this effect, seems OP. Um, so pretty big changes across the board for Rek'Sai. We will see how this pans out for sure. I expect Rek'Sai to make a small return in pro play, but we will see how this goes. Um, Quality of life update on W. Targeted range increased to match untargeted range. This will mean that the optimization already was better to line Rek'Sai up to the edge of your knockup and press W at the perfect time instead of just clicking the opponent has been removed. Uh, which I think is great. Just a quality of life update. I think this is good. I expect Rek'Sai to get maybe like a 1% win rate increase in this patch. Renekton is less and dies cooldown 18 to 14 to 16 to 12. That's a big buff. Minus 2 seconds on his mobility ability, which is great. Our Dominus cooldown 120 to 80 seconds. So uh, at level 16, for example, you are at like 80 seconds of cooldown, which is great. Magic damage per tick per zero point 0.5 seconds, 25 to 75 to 30 to 90. So big nerfs for big buffs, sorry, for Renekton across the board. Um, more mobility now with his E is great. Um, more damage on his R, and less cooldown on his R as well. All big changes. Uh, if anything, like this helps his mid to late game transition so much more. Because in the early game this doesn't really matter. This does not really matter either as much. I mean, having two fewer seconds is great, of course, but uh, Renekton will keep on playing the exact same laning phase. But in the mid to late game, when you get enough, ability haste and all that, this can be big alongside this. So I think Renekton gets a big buff here, maybe like a zero point 0.8, zero point 0.9, even 1% increase in win rate. Twisted Fate, W, pick a card, 8 to 6 cooldown. They say change here, which is weird. Um, W cooldown 8 to 6 seconds to 6 seconds at all ranks. This is great, especially for his early game. This is the ability that he maxes second, if I'm not mistaken. So having his W 2 seconds more quickly in the early game, especially means that he can, W blue card and get his mana back, for example, or push the wave with a red card more consistently, or like even like zone people out with his gold card hover. I think this is a massive change. Um, I mean, when I say massive, I mean it's not massive that TF suddenly becomes the OP meta mid pick. It seems like a small change, but in reality can be pretty big. But is it big enough to make him meta again? Honestly, maybe. To be honest, honestly, it can be enough in some cases to make him meta again. So we will see how it goes. Ardent Sensor, I'm assuming there is a nerf here because Ardent Sensor was quite strong. Bonus attack speed 15 to 30% to 20%, so not the biggest nerf in the world. Uh, for the Enchanter players out there, I think we got off easy with this one. The Split of Drakthar, I'm assuming there's a nerf here. Night Stalker bonus ability damage 0 to 15% to 0 to 20%. Maximum bonus damage health threshold 20% remaining health to 30% remaining health. So Duskblade of Drakthar became a trash item on pretty much all champions. So now what they did is they initially increased the ability damage based on the target's missing health, and you get the 20% now at 30% remaining health, and not the 15% at 20% remaining health, which is great. I think this is still a bad item. Um, why would you build this where you get this passive and not build Navori Quick Blades where, I mean, you need critical strike chance to get this passive on Navori Quick Blades, but you only get this if the target is missing health. Um, so in the beginning, like if they are like full HP, then you get 0% here. With Navori, once you build Navori, you get 4% extra damage with your abilities forever, regardless of the enemy health. And as you build more and more critical strike chance, then you get 8, like 12%, 16%, all the way to up to 20%. Again, which is regardless of the enemy's health. it happens based on how much critical strike chance you have. So why would you build this and not build Navori Quick Blades, for example? I mean, I understand this is more of a one item power spike for sure, and you get the untargetability passive as well. But I think Duskblade is like, I don't know. I think you need more than this. You need more than this to make it work. Maybe if this was like 50% remaining health, the threshold. So if your opponent is like 50% or below health, then you get 20% increased damage on them. Maybe that would be fine. But I don't know. I do not think this changes anything. Echoes of Helia. So passive healing per shot 20 to 100 to 20 to 80. Damage passive damage per shot 30 to 200 to 30 to 180. So I think this was kind of a very strong item, Echoes of Helia, so I think nerf was deserved. Gale Force, active damage. 250% of critical strike chance to 200% critical strike chance. Maximum execution damage 160% to 150%. So I think Gale Force active damage was quite strong, quite big on the execution thing. Paired with the less cooldown that it had, I think it was a strong item, especially with things like Lucian, potentially Tristana, I think. So I think this is a good chance for Gale for like tone it down just a little bit so that it is not as oppressive, because previously I think you could go with Lucian E auto, Q auto, W auto, Gale Force, and I think most enemies will be dead at that point. Kraken Slayer. Damage type magic to physical damage. It made no sense for it to be magic damage. Change 20 base damage goes to 35 to 85, which is massive. 6% AD goes to 65% AD, and 45% AP goes to 60% AP. So obviously the proc damage is much bigger now, but the fact that it instead of magic damage it's now physical means that since most enemies have pretty much anybody has more armor over magic resist, that this damage is not as effective because it's physical now. But I still think it's much more than it was before, um, and I think it was a necessary buff for the item because Kraken Slayer was completely dog shit in this patch. Moonstone Renewer. I think this item is a big buff because it's shit now. Chain Healing 20 to 35 to 20 to 40%. Single heal 15 to 25 to 15 to 30. I'm not sure if this is enough, but at least it's probably not as shit as it was before. So it is what it is. Now, very quick blades. I think I said in the previous patch that Navori's passive, the mythic passive, is terrible because it currently gives 5 ability haste, right? Like, why the fuck do I need to get ability haste uh, on an item that reduces my abilities cooldown as long as I auto attack? Like, it makes no sense, you know? Because in that case, I get reduced value from auto attacking. So like it should get a similar passive to something like Infinity Edge, at least the 5 AD, and even that, even the 5 AD, I think it's so terrible. Like you almost get 7 AD as a mythic passive. Why? Like Infinity Edge gets 5 and you almost get 7. Why? I don't get it. Um, but let's see. So Navori Quick Blades attack damage 60 to 65. That's nice. Plus 5 AD. That's what 175 worth of gold. That's great. Ability haste 20 to 15 doesn't matter. As I said, ability haste doesn't matter because you're auto attacking and reduces the cooldowns. Transcendence cooldown reduction 12% to 50%. Great. Uh, it turns more into, oh, I auto attack, so I reduce the cooldowns of my abilities. This doesn't matter because this exists. I mean, this exists. Mythic passive, 5 ability haste to 5 AD. Again, great. This doesn't change anything. At full build, you have 4 legendary items, which would mean you will be getting 20 ability haste. Plus 20 from this, you will be getting 40 ability haste from Navori quickly. It does not matter as long as you have this passive. Doesn't matter. Now, instead of 40, you have 15. Does not matter at all, apart from maybe your ultimate cooldown, but does not matter at all as long as you have this. So now instead, what you get is 25 less ability haste, but you get 25 more attack damage, which is massive. Um, Great change for Navori. I cannot even understand how they let the current version of Navori exist in the game as an item, especially as a mythic item. These are great changes though. Reynolds Hurricane. It's a bit overdue. No, no shit. On hit damage 30 to 15 doesn't really matter. You do not pick Reynolds Hurricane for its on hit damage. You pick it for the AoE. So this will not change the item and the champions that build it. Static Shift is a shit item. Everybody was excited. It has a cool visual, but apart from that, Static Shift is a shit item. It was shit before, it's still shit now. Uh, Most champions can wave clear quite easily now. Like things like Caitlyn, Sivir, Tristana, Varus. All these champions can wave clear so easily. Even things like Vayne. I don't know. Even Vayne can clear waves now. Like if anything, only Vayne should be building this item. Maybe Kog'Maw. No, Kog'Maw has his ultimate. Only Vayne should be building this item. Nobody else should be building this item because nobody else needs a wave clear. Um, Civ launch a bit underpowered. Oh, really? Energize damage 60 to 170 to 80 to 190. So what? Plus 20 damage. And damage to minions modified to 20% to 50%. Does not matter at all. I mean, again, the only champion that should be building static save is Vayne because it does not have any wave clear. This might help you like clear waves in a correct way because the previous numbers were terrible. Like you could not even clear waves with a static save in the current form. It's so weird. It's so bad. Um, will this matter inside the team fight? Like you're at Baron where Civ bounces to enemy champions. Will this matter? Probably not. Static Civ is a bad item. It was bad before. People were excited. I don't know why. Just a cool visual and nothing else. The item is terrible. Removed from the game. Nobody wants this item anymore. Storm Razor, attack damage 55 to 50. Change. Is that the proc damage, I think? 25 to 15 base damage. 65% total AD to 60% total AD. So Storm Razor was a strong first item. Great for trading, especially for things like Caitlyn with the extra auto attack range. You build Storm Razor. You auto attack once, you deal like basically double your auto attack damage. So I think a nerf is needed for this item. Yomu's Ghostblade, I think the item is strong. I think they will nerf this. Ability haste 20 to 15, not the biggest change in the world. Bonus lethality at maximum stacks 8 to 20 to 3 to 12. What? Oh no, Riot, what are you doing? Oh man, this is terrible. So first of all, it's already hard enough to stack this item to 100 stacks. Now you need more stacks, more time to stack it. Not only that, you get -5 ability haste, which whatever, it's fine. But now instead of 8 to 20 lethality, you get 3 to 12, which is terrible. What am I supposed to do with this? What is this? Why? Why not go freaking collect your first item then? What's the point of building this item just to get freaking 12? Like at level 7 on a jungler, which is typically I think when you're gonna build it like 7, 8, 9, you were getting like 13 lethality. Now you get freaking 6, 7. What the dude? Why? Like, why go from 8 to 20 to 3 to 12 and go from like 5 to 18, for example? Like, the item is strong, sure. Why go from like this huge drop? I don't get it. Why not go like 5 to 15, for example? 5 to 16? Why 3 to 12? Oh man, what a patch. It keeps getting worse and worse now. Okay, buff sharing. Buff sharing has been pretty similar since the dawn of League. You get your first 2 or 3 buffs, but then your mid laner AD carries start thinking they deserve them. Can you believe it? Why am I reading this? Buff Wisp. When a jungler kills red Brambleback or the Blue Sentinel, while the smite is fully upgraded, so once the jungle item is removed from the inventory, they would still receive the camp's buff, but in addition, a buff wisp will be dropped at the camp's spawn point, and they can pick it up by walking within the wisp radius within 1 minute of the camp, dying before it disappears. Note you do not need to smite the camp at any time in order for the buff to wish to drop, but smite must be fully upgraded. But another jungler, if a player that is not the jungler kills a red Brambleback or the blue sentinel, but the jungler's smite is fully upgraded, then a buff which will still drop, but it will only be visible to the allied jungler, who still only remain for 1 minute. So I think basically this is exactly what happens with Ivan, right? Which is finally, like it only took them like 13 seasons to create this, but finally they figured it out. Uh, there was no need for this to not be existing in the game for so long now. Um, the fact is that the jungler needs to have their smite fully upgraded, which means that this will only happen from like 18 minutes. I cannot even remember the timer where you fully upgrade your jungle smite, but I think it's like 16, 17 minutes, 18 minutes, I think. Um, so after that, like for sure, I think after 20 minutes. So like after 20 minutes, now your AD carry can get a red buff. Your mana hungry top or mid laner or whoever can get the blue buff, and you can get both of them, and that's great. That's very nice. ARAM adjustments. Is the Sivir on the buffs? Nope. Velvet Queen, Tristana, Olaf, Mordecai, Summervine, Relia. Nerfs to. Okay, great. Adjustments. Ash. Okay, let's see. This is going to be funny. Minus 20 ability haste to minus 30 ability haste. 150% damage taken to 100% damage taken. Okay. This is good because now at least she doesn't get one shot by everything. Clash, bug fixes. Okay, so quick recap of the patch. Akali, good nerf. I mean, good buff for Akali potentially. Wait, what do they say? Q base damage decrease when it's increased? What? Riot. Um, so yeah, in any case, Akali good buff, not game changing, but good buff. Amumu good nerf. Aphelios doesn't matter. Aurelion Sol good nerf to his early game, which means nerf to his mid and late game, since he is an infinite stacking champion. Azir buff to his early game especially, but doesn't really change a lot. Great changes for Ivern. I think he's the big winner of this patch. Great changes. Jinx doesn't matter. Kalista, I think stronger late game, but I don't know. We will see. Rek'Sai, again, the second winner of this patch. Great buffs, um, and pretty much needed. and I'm expecting to see Rek'Sai back in pro play. Renekton, the third winner, I think, of this patch. Not game-breaking buffs, but things that help his mid and late game. Twisted Fate, another winner of this patch, not a big winner, but his W having two fewer seconds of cooldown rank 1 means that he can control the laning phase much better now. So we can expect Twisted Fate to pop his head occasionally in pro play as well. Small nerf to Ardent Sensor, but the item is still strong. Buff to Duskblade, but I think the item is shit. Echoes of Helia, nerf to the item because it was quite strong. Gale Force nerf to his active makes sense. Kraken Slayer buffed, it was trash before, I think it's fine now. Moonstone Renewer, it was trash before, I still think it's trash now. Avoid Quick Blades, the winning item of this patch. Basically, they swapped the ability haste with attack damage, which is great. Runs Hurricane, doesn't matter. Static Sieve, item was shit, item is still shit. It was shit even in freaking season 5. Storm Razor, small nerf to it, makes sense. Yom's Blade nerf doesn't make any sense. The buff sharing is great. So overall, like half of the patch was great and half of the patch was terrible. I don't know what Riot is thinking. I'm expecting even like mid patch. I'm expecting Ghostblade to go from 3 to 12 to like 5 to 16 or something. You know. Uh, but yeah, in any case, this is the patch notes rundown. Actually, you know what? Let's do Rell as well. It's gonna be a longer video though, but whatever. So Rell base stats, attack speed has much more attack speed now. Attack speed growth, slightly less, doesn't matter though because he gets so much more from this. Armor growth 4.2 to 3, slightly less tanky. Magic resist growth 2 to 1, movement speed 335 to 330. So she gets more attack speed but less tankiness and less attack speed now. We will see how this combine with everything else. So passive, break the mold, passive duration 4 seconds to 5 seconds. So the passive is that when you attack an enemy, you steal their armor and magic resist, right? Something like that. Armor and magic resist shred. Yeah, there we go. 10% to 2. Oh, what? To 2.5%. Okay. Stacks on stacks. Armor and magic resist shred now stacks up to 5 times per target. All of Rel's ability also will apply a stack for her passive. Uh, so what? Now, like before, you were getting 10% of their armor and MR, but now if you attack the same enemy again and again, it gets stacked up to 5 times. So you go from 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10, and 12.5. And her abilities also proc this. So if you dive in with like W and Alt and Q, auto attack, etc., you have the potential of stealing more armor and MR from them, which I mean it kind of is some sort of like skill expression, which is fine. Minimum armor and magic resist steel, doesn't matter. This is just a follow up on this. New death proof magnets. Rel keeps resist for the full duration of the passive buff, even if the target dies. Uh, okay, that's nice. Passive no longer deals bonus magic damage on hit. Uh, okay, was this that big of damage? I'm not sure. Hitting in target no longer refreshes the passive duration on all targets. Okay, this is bad, I guess, for Rel, but okay, passive no longer applies to minions. Oh no. So some big changes to her passive from the beginning. Now it only applies to like jungle camps and champions, I'm assuming. You have the potential of getting much more, like not much, but to get a bit more tankier now. But initially you're not. So we will see how this affects your initial tankiness inside the team fight or inside the 2v2 in the bottom lane. Q Saturn Strike. Q now stuns all targets hit for 0.75 seconds. Wow, that's big. Q no longer heals Rell or her allies. It felt weird that this ability healed Rell and allies, so that's fine. Range. Okay, so the range is slightly smaller in front of Rell, but slightly bigger behind Rell. So I don't think this really changes much because you are most likely on top of them anyway. So having less range on this doesn't really matter. But having more range behind Rell, kind of like an Azir ultimate, it can be big because sometimes you go into the middle of a team fight, for example, you are everybody and some people are behind you. Now you have this small chance that when you queue, you can hit some of them that are behind you as well, which is great, I think. Cooldown 9 to 5 seconds to 11 to 9, so a big increase in the cooldown. Magic damage 70 to 250 to 60 to 200, so less damage on the Q. Um, I think overall this seems like a nerf so far for Q, apart from the fact that it will now be stunning targets, which is always great. Cast time 0.35 to 0.5, so slightly more unreliable now. Deals 250% damage to jungle camps if you want to be a jungler. When Rell casts Q, she moves 100 units forward as it takes a step to swing. Um, what? Why? So does this mean that this is 620 now instead of 520, and this is 120 behind here? I don't know. We will see how this works out. All the damages on old Rell, Q did reduce damage to enemies hit after the first, and only applied passive to the first enemy hit. Now it does full damage and applies passive to all the enemies hit. Okay, this is great. I mean, since it does not, since your passive does not work on minions anymore, how often are you going to be using your Q on multiple champions, in a row, right? So does this really matter? I mean, there will be occasions where you get to hit like two of them, maybe even three. But apart from that, I do not think this makes a lot of sense, I guess. So overall, you get like more cooldown, less damage, more cast time, and all that, but you get a stun on it, so I guess it's fine. W Ferromancy crash down, so you're on top of the horse and you press W to get off the horse and become tanky, right? Dismounted bonus attack speed 15 to 35%. It's a new buff, didn't exist before. So this in combination with this gives her like a lot more attack speed now, which is great for like clearing wards and all that. Even like fighting, um, that's great. Guess kind of makes up for the lost damage on this. Dismounted bonus attack range gains 75 attack range. 75 attack. Well, yeah, okay, that's great. More target access, I guess. Dismounted bonus armor and magic resist 10 to 12%, so you're tankier now than you were before. Of course, you have less armor and MR now, so I think this kind of balances it out. Dismounted movement speed reduced to 280 flat to reduced by 15%. This will be a nerf early game, but a buff late game. Wait, why though? Well, if you like build boots, etc., this is better now? Probably, I don't know. Cannot stop me now. Rell no longer has a movement speed cap while dismounted. Okay. Um, fine. Magic damage, 70 to 210 to 70 to 190, so less damage from this. Shield value, 35 to 135 to 30 to 130, and 12% max shield to 10% max shield, so you get less shielding and less damage from this. Maximum slide distance, 375 to 320, so a smaller AoE. AoE radius from 200 to 180, jump rates 500 to 400, knockup duration 1 second to 0.75 second, slide speed 85% of jump speed to 100% of jump speed, deals 250% damage to jungle camps. So overall, it's less reliable to hit now, but you get more stats when you actually crash down and start fighting, which I think is fine. I think the AoE is still big enough for it to not be a problem. Um, but in general, there is a big nerf here, kind of, but a big buff here. So we will see how this plays out. W Ferromancy mount up. So now you try to jump on the horse again. So what happens then? Red no longer gains bonus passive movement speed while mounted. Wait, what? Why? What? Okay. Initial bonus movement speed, 25 to 45% for 3.5 seconds to 30% that rapidly decays over 1 second. What? So now you jump on top of the horse, but the horse does not run fast enough? What is this? Okay. I don't like this. E, attract and repel. Passive. Oh, okay. Okay. Rel gains movement speed while mounted at levels 1 to 13. Reduced with this. Okay, is passive at levels 1 to 13. Rel gains 5 to 50 movement speed while mounted. So you do not have this, or I mean this, but you get it here. Reduced by 50% in combat. Okay, that's fine. Active. Rel and Analyte charge, gaining ramping movement speed up to 15 to 25% over 3 seconds. This is doubled to 30 to 50% toward enemies or each other. Additionally, Rel's next attack or Shattering Strike is Q, explodes in an area for 25 to 65 for some damage. Okay. Uh what? So now you press E and you gain movement speed, right? Like you are on top of the horse now. You have movement speed because you're on top of the horse, and you press E. You and your ally just get more movement speed to like charge to an enemy, right? And next attack from Rel or Q. So does this means that even if she crashes down from the horse, she still gets this buff, right? So I'm assuming you're on top of the horse, you press C, you run, you press your W, this big AoE thing, and then you press your auto attack or your Q to deal some damage, and that's it? Huh. Okay. It is, so yeah, it's kind of a rework. I mean, her E stun is now on her Q, which is more reliable, I think. Her E gives her some movement speed for her to have like target access. I think this is a fine change. So yeah, I think we will see how it goes. Anyway, this was a long video, longer than I expected. So uh, again, the patch was like half of it was good, half of it was bad, but we will see how it goes on Summoner's Rift. So see you guys.